in this presentation, I want to talk about the connection between hormone fluctuations and gut health. And I do believe that after this, you'll understand why, as women age and go through menopause, that they start to have trouble with their belly fat, bone density, and all of that. So I'm really happy you're here. My name is Cindy. For those who don't know me, I'm a holistic nutritionist. I studied out of CSNN, the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, and I'm very passionate about helping women with their health issues, whether it's puberty, menopause. But I'm 48. So I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm happily at 48, and I am going through those phases too. And I'm really glad that I learned, how to kind of navigate, because my mom certainly didn't, and I have some friends who didn't. And and I could see that had a big health impact. And I know, I have an aunt who had to go through surgery because she had like a lot of muscle atrophy in her pelvic floor, and her organs were like protruding, and it was very, very uncomfortable. And I hear a lot of women with these types of issues, and so just wanted to like spread the word, so we can take some action ahead of time. And so joining me on this webinar, I have Nicole Reilkoff. She's a naturopath. She works out of NDG, Queen Elizabeth Hospital. But Nicole provides naturopath treatment protocols, but also reflexology. And she offers tests for gut flora, for heavy metals, for hormone, for thyroid. So there's a lot of different tests that you can ask her questions about at the end of the presentation. And I'm also joined by Alexandra, who is a Pilates instructor, and she did specialize in Pilates for menopause. So I'm so thrilled that she can add in some of her experience and recommendations. And so without further ado, I'm going to start my presentation. Do you have any questions before we start? Any comments? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to either put in the chat box, or if it's relevant, like in that moment, you really need to clarify, you can interrupt, no problem. But I will be opening the floor later on for Nicole to speak and Alexandra to speak, and then, we can have more of a dialogue as well. Okay, so let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so for those of you who already are going through perimenopause, you probably kind of know, maybe your doctor told you, maybe you had some blood tests and, your hormones or estrogen, progesterone are lower, and then, you were told, but some people don't know. And some people, are before that. And so they like to know about the signs. So we generally have 4 terms. We have the premenopause, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And you'll start hearing these terms. And just so we have an understanding, premenopause is, you're just going through your regular period, your regular cycle. But perimenopause is generally about, in your 40s, but some people start in their late 30s or mid 30s as well. And during that time, you'll start to experience maybe some irregular periods. You may have some heavier periods or shorter cycles. You may have a skipped period. And then there's other symptoms too that can indicate that your hormones are starting to change and they're starting to decline. And then there's menopause, which is defined by the moment where you've gone through 12 full months without a period. So 1 full year without a period, that's when you've officially started menopause. And then some period after that is postmenopause. And so right now, I'm specifically going to talk about perimenopause. And I'm going to talk more about gut health issues. Of course, there's hormone issues, but that's something that is a huge topic as well. So specifically to perimenopause, there's all of these symptoms. Some people say there's like 80 different symptoms, and I've even seen like, which is crazy, right? Like there's all these symptoms. But the most popular ones are usually, the hot flashes, maybe increased headaches, migraines due to, the hormones. There could be insomnia, there could be weight changes. Maybe their breasts also feel differently. There could be soreness or lumpy breasts. That could also be due to estrogen levels or estrogen dominance, a loss of libido, vaginal dryness. Those are very common. Oh, Fanta just joined, but those are common symptoms of perimenopause leading into menopause. And so to understand perimenopause and what is going on in your body, so first of all, I just want you to bring your attention to this graph here. So in this graph, you have your childhood years, the teenage years, and as you can see, the dotted line is the estradiol, so like the estrogen in our body, and then there's progesterone. So those are the two main hormones, two main sex hormones. Of course, we have androgens, we have like testosterone, and we have cortisol, we have other hormones. But just for the purpose of to simplify, we're just going to talk about estrogen and progesterone for now. So in your childhood, it's a pretty flat line. You're pretty much very low in both hormones. But as you go through teenage years, you start to have an increased amount of estrogen and progesterone. And estrogen is a pro-growth hormone. It helps to develop your breasts, your curves, and it's actually both of them come into play with muscle strength and even bone strength. And so in your teenage years, you can see how erratic estrogen can go as it increases, and that's where you can understand where there's a lot of moodiness in teenagers, and outbursts and things like that. So there is kind of like a wave. But as you start to go into your reproductive years, you can see how estrogen is sort of leveling out. The kind of spikes are less. And you do have progesterone too that are usually higher than estrogen when you go through your menstrual cycle. So the first wave, and I'll explain that later, but you can still see that the peaks are kind of consistent of both estrogen and progesterone. So you still have that level, that consistency. But then as you go through perimenopause, you can think of perimenopause as the reverse of puberty, because it's like you're still spiking now, but you're declining in estrogen. So there are some unexpected spikes. So such as here, you can see a really high spike during perimenopause, because your body is kind of down, like regulating it, but on a decline. So there's that uncertainty, but it is, and that's why there's these hot flashes and all of these symptoms, because there is that kind of imbalance going on as you start to decline, as your ovaries start to make less and less of both hormones. And then, of course, there's menopause, and then post-menopause, it is very similar to this, again, going back to your childhood. So a lot of women after menopause, they actually feel a lot more even with their mood, and then there is a relief in there as well. So something to look forward to. Anyway, if you manage it well, that is, if you're in good shape and good health, then the menopausal years are actually really, really worth celebrating, worth looking forward to as well. So
Cindy,
what's going on? Yes?
Do you mind just putting one slide back? I just want to get the symptoms or signs of, thank you so much. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, do you have any questions regarding this, or?
No, it's good.
Yeah, and actually I found that there's another 40 different symptoms that is related. It's not even on the slide, but there's so many different ones that people talk about. Like, I'm in this Facebook group on early menopause and perimenopause, and every day I see like people talking about new symptoms. Is this normal? Am I, is this the shrinking? Is that normal? Like, I don't feel it down there. Or, so many things in terms of also their gut issues too. Like they look pregnant, so it's just incredible. But
and is perimenopause from 40, it starts between 45 and 52, or it lasts that long, historically 7 years? Is it usually you're in the perimenopause phase for 7 years?
Yes, so it could start as early, even in some women experience it in their late 30s. And you can often ask, like your mom, if she's around, if your mom, your grandmother, a lot of times your aunts, that could give you an indication. Also when you started your period, but the duration is usually about 5 to 7 years, the duration of going through these kind of changes. But of course, it depends per person. So when you have reduced progesterone, so if you look at the perimenopause curve here, you have a reduced amount of progesterone. And so the ratio is quite different. And there's an importance in maintaining a good ratio. And I'll explain to you why. When you have estrogen dominance, which is a higher ratio of estrogen to progesterone, it could also cause you to have symptoms too. Symptoms could include like irritability. It could include like heavier periods. And also insulin resistance can occur with estrogen dominance. So insulin resistance basically is when your body's having a hard time using insulin to metabolize the sugar. So your cells, they all have receptors, and on the receptors, there's receptors for insulin. So when you eat like sugar or carby stuff, the insulin comes out, and the cells can open up and receive that glucose, that energy. But if you're doing it often and you have a high carb diet, let's say, and the insulin is it's like somebody ringing your doorbell like 30 times a day, and you just kind of tune out after a while. So you have this level of insulin, but the cells are kind of tuning out to it. And so what happens then is that sugar doesn't get in the cell. Instead, it gets stored as fat, and the cells are kind of depleted. So you're still tired. You're still kind of, craving a food and sugar and all that because you're not getting it, and yet you're still gaining weight. And so that could happen with insulin resistance. And because estrogen does help in the sensitivity of insulin, when you have a fluctuating estrogen, that can impact how sensitive your cells are to insulin. And that can cause weight gain. And so I'll explain a little bit more. So estrogen is more of a, if you watched The Devil Wears Prada, you have Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway, those two roles. And you remember how, I don't know if you've watched that movie, but Meryl Streep's personality, she's more dominant. She's like very fiery. And then Anne Hathaway is more like the admin, she's there to support Meryl Streep's character, and she's there as a very like harmonious type of personality. So I would characterize progesterone as a very calming hormone. Estrogen is more of a pro-growth. If you're higher in estrogen, like during your ovulation, in your cycle, there's a period of time where you're really energetic and you're really kind of like sociable. But then after you ovulate, you can be a little bit more, calm, and you may be a little bit more reclusive. So when you do have more estrogen than progesterone, you could experience like bloating, heavier periods, PMS. People who have growths, as fibroids, ovarian cysts, like polyps, fibrocystic breasts, anything to do with these types of growths, there is a high probability that they're higher in estrogen or estrogen dominant. And so acne, all of that. And, your body needs to be able to detox estrogen. I mean, it does that naturally, but there are things that get in the way, and then estrogen starts to build up more. And so supporting your liver, supporting your kidneys, your colon, having that good gut health can help to kind of remove this extra estrogen. So here you have a slide, a picture of your period for those who are still getting their periods. But I'll tell you, even if you're not, you can still kind of use this concept to help you understand a little bit of the relationship between estrogen and progesterone. So normally in a cycle, your first half, when you start your period, which is day 1, which is when you bleed, the first day of bleeding, your estrogen starts to rise. And then it starts to peak at about day 14. That's when you ovulate. And this is the period of time where I was saying how, you're a lot more energized. You want to like maybe ask for a promotion or start that new project or organize a party, or throw webinars. Sometimes it's funny because I noticed that about myself. There's days when I'm like, I'm going to do all of this. And then a week later, I'm wondering why I did that. I'm like, I'm exhausted. Why the hell did I, overdo it? But anyway, so then after ovulation, you have the luteal phase where progesterone starts to rise. And progesterone only gets produced by ovulation. So when you, let's say, go through perimenopause and you have months where you don't ovulate, you can start to understand why estrogen becomes a little bit more dominant, because progesterone never got created since there was no ovulation. And so, therefore, with estrogen dominance, there could be insulin resistance, again, the belly fat. With very low estrogen, as you go through menopause and beyond, there could also be that insulin resistance. So it is a bit kind of confusing for some people. Estrogen dominance can also affect insulin, but low estrogen can also affect insulin. And there's a lot of studies that are made on both situations. And so I wanted to just go over the path of estrogen so you can understand how the gut is involved in this. So in a healthy gut, and I say microbiome because in your gut, there's a lot of microbes that help you digest, that help your immune system, that help you stay healthy. And they also need to be balanced because there's the friendly bugs, and then there's the not so friendly bugs. But in a healthy microbiome, what happens is that your ovaries, they produce the estrogen, it goes through your body, and then it goes through your liver. So at the end of the cycle, all the extra estrogen has to, get out of your bloodstream. So your liver will filter that. And then it will bring it into the gut, into the colon, into your intestines. And most of it will be pooped out. But some of it will kind of get reabsorbed too by the gut microbes. But when you have an imbalanced microbiome, what happens then is that all these steps remain the same, but by the time it goes into your gut, there's some bacteria that could break the bonds of these estrogens and get them reabsorbed fast. So that ends up recycling that estrogen back into your bloodstream. And that could happen month after month. So then you can become more and more estrogen dominant. And this is an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. I don't want to say it, saying it right, beta-glucuronidase. So what happens is in your microbiome, there's such a thing called, so this explains the microbiome. There's different kind of bacteria, fungi, viruses. A lot of it is very helpful. It contributes to 70 to 80% of your immune health. And it regulates inflammation. It helps you digest food. It helps you with producing nutrients such as hormone like serotonin. 70 to 80% of the serotonin is actually produced in the gut. It converts beta carotene to vitamin A. So it does a lot of work. It's not just, there to digest food. It has a very useful purpose. And it's not just in your gut. Actually, it's all over your body. It exists in your eyes, in your skin, all over. So nowadays, when you walk into like IGA, you could see probiotics for different reasons. You can see some for mood, some for the prostate, some for your, weight loss. I mean, there's so many, and it all depends on the strains of bacteria. But there is a recognition that there's still a lot of research to be done in this wonderful world of the microbiome. And when we were younger, like when we were in school, in high school, that word probiotic didn't even exist to me. Like, I don't know how many people, I can still remember the first time I heard about it. I think it was maybe 10 years ago. I was still working in corporate, and my aunt gave me some kefir strains, kefir, like grains where I can make kefir, fermented milk. And I started researching that, and I found the word probiotic in there. And then shortly after, I saw it on billboards, and they started, really pushing probiotics. So it's quite interesting. But what I wanted to get to is that within the microbiome, there's such a thing called estrobolome. So again, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Estrobolome. But it is a group of microbes that actually help with interacting and metabolizing estrogen. And these microbes, if they're imbalanced, there could be an enzyme produced called beta-glucuronidase, and this activates the estrogen and puts it back into circulation. So this is why having a healthy gut microbiome is so important, because it could affect how your body will end up reabsorbing some of those estrogen that's supposed to be excreted. So without going too much into details, I just wanted to still show you the screen where, starting at the top left, you have your ovaries, your adrenals, you have fat tissue, and they all can produce some level of hormones and estrogen. So yes, when you start getting more like fatty tissue, that's fat cells can also impact and have higher levels of estrogen coming out into the body. So this gets circulated in the bloodstream, it goes to the liver, and the liver will then filter it out and conjugate the estrogen. So think of it as putting a binding agent on it to say, okay, I'm putting something on top of this so that it could be recognized as garbage. It has to be sent out into your poop. So it goes through the intestinal tract. But then if you have, and the estrobolome is, if it's high, normally it would do its job, but basically a lot of it should be excreted out. However, if you don't have a healthy microbiome, then it could get deconjugated. So that cap gets removed, and that those estrogens gets reabsorbed back in the liver, going back into your bloodstream. So basically there's, signs of imbalanced gut bacteria, which we had talked about earlier, the bloating, the constipation, the irregular bowel movements. But there's also signs of, toxicity. So if you have like bad body odor or bad breath, if you tend to get infections easily, especially yeast infection or thrush, on your tongue, sinus infections, things like that, there could be an imbalance of the microbiome. And you could, if you do have that, a lot of people would get a sense of anxiety or nervousness, and they often will feel a lot calmer when they start taking like probiotics or fermented foods. And I know for myself, I used to have trouble sleeping, but when I started drinking that kefir from my aunt, I loved it. It really helped me sleep. And so I still take it today. I still have her kefir grains. And so in the digestive system, there's multiple parts that it's like a symphony in an orchestra. It has to work together. So it's not just one element. And so when I talk about food to my clients, I often say that it's not, you are not your food, but you are what you absorb, right? It's how your digestive system absorbs the food. And if you're getting the benefits from, the foods that you eat, because you could be eating organic foods, you can be as clean as you can. And, if you have low stomach acid, if you're not producing the right amount of bile to digest the fats, you can still have a lot of issues and become nutrient deficient. So, your stomach acid level is important. Your enzyme level, which is made from your pancreas, it can be made also in your saliva. You have enzymes in your saliva. And your liver makes bile, which is a type of detergent. Just think of it as detergent that you can put into your dishes to like separate the fat globules, and that's bile. And then it shoots it into the gallbladder. So to have concentrated bile, enough bile, is also very important, because a lot of the nutrients, like fat-soluble vitamins, they live in the fat. So if you cannot absorb the fat, you can be lacking some of those fat-soluble vitamins. And so, yes, there's many aspects to think about when it comes to gut health. Your mucosal lining, do you have inflammation in the gut? How, well are you able to go, and go for a poop, go for a bowel movement? Are you going every day? Are you having enough fiber in your food? Is the gut motility not really as strong? Like maybe it's kind of became, I would say, weak or lazy, like it's not moving, and there's certain things you can do to stimulate its movement. And then of course the microbiome is so important, like one element of that. There is also impact with stress. So if you have a lot of stress going on, your body shifts into a fight or flight mode. And you know that when you digest food, you need to be in a calm rest and digest mode. So if you go into fight or flight mode, all of these things I mentioned earlier, like the bile, the enzymes, the stomach acid, they will be less made, because you're stressed. You're supposed to have enough blood going through your arms and legs to run and to fight, right? So you wouldn't be able to have a dedicated amount of blood flow going into your digestive system. So it's really important to calm yourself down and be in a very relaxed state when you eat. And so there are supplements out there that help you, with increasing your stomach acid, if that's really the case. And there are tests out there that you can do. There's ways to measure, and there's definitely like enzymes that, you can take to support your digestion, things that you can take, herbs that you can take to calm and soothe your intestinal mucus lining, and obviously food, fermented foods, cultured foods for your good bacteria. And so one other thing I wanted to mention about the hormones itself is that when you go through perimenopause and menopause, so you know how the estrogen and progesterone starts to decline. So because your ovaries are starting to slow down, your adrenals have to also work harder, because they also have to maintain these kinds of hormones to a certain degree. So they still have to produce different hormones as well. So it puts a demand on your adrenal glands. And so a lot of women that are going through this time can get stressed very easily, just feel overwhelmed, especially if they can't sleep to begin with, because progesterone levels are very low. And so all of that plays a role in your digestive system, because again, if you're under stress, your digestive system is not working as optimal as it could. And so I wanted to just touch on foods that can help. There's 4 classes of food that I find if you have belly fat, if you're bloated, that could really be effective if you add it back into your diet. And now I don't have enough time to talk about what you should remove from your diet, because things like sugar, dairy, alcohol, not all dairy, but I would say specifically milk can be hard to tolerate, but definitely alcohol and sugar, refined carbs, that could off balance the microbiome, and it could contribute to your insulin resistance and contribute to your belly fat. So if you start to remove that, at the very least, to just remove the refined carbs, such as the crackers, the sugary foods, the pastries. I mean, you can indulge a little bit, but note that there's a period of time where you can try to clean it out for a bit to reset your insulin resistance, so that, just like the doorbell ringing 3 times a day, if you can silence it for a few days, and then once it rings, you're going to be that much more alert to it. You're going to be like, oh my God, somebody's at the door, as opposed to just tuning out. So there could be a period of time where you want to just, eliminate those foods for a bit. But to lose weight, one group of foods that I want to talk about is called thermogenic foods. So those are types of foods that help to boost your metabolism a little bit. It creates some heat in your body. They can increase circulation in your body. And having those foods would be very helpful for weight loss. And, other groups could be the adrenal and hormone support group of foods, the groups of foods that help with detox, help with your liver, what we talked about earlier. And then the gut healthy foods, like cultured foods, foods that are good for the probiotics, such as prebiotic foods. They have the right fiber, to feed the gut bacteria. So those are the 4 food groups that I'd like to touch on. I just want to mention quickly the concept of thermogenesis. So there was a mouse study done where they had separated the mice into 2 groups, and half of them, so one group, their body temperature was raised by 2 degrees. And they showed the comparison and how the group of mice that had a higher body temperature were producing a lot more immune cells, T cells. They had a stronger immune system. During the winter times, it's really important to keep your body heat warm, so your body has less work to do. So taking the hot bath, going to a sauna, wearing socks in the house, making sure you have warm blankets, things like that. But there's also a group of foods that have the similar thermogenic effect. It's good for your immune system, but also helps with weight loss. And once I start talking about it, you're going to know. Actually, can you guess? Anybody want to guess what foods are thermogenic? I'd love to see.
Like spicy foods?
Very good. Some spicy foods. Yes.
Ginger and stuff like that, I would think.
Yeah. So here they are. There's more. Of course, I'm not going to go into every single one, but yes, the concept is that they are, good for your digestion. They help to promote that kind of thermic effect. Black pepper, cayenne, cinnamon, ginger. So if you add some of this into your diet, by the way, when I say diet, I mean food choices, because diet seems to have this connotation every time I say diet. But what I really mean is just food choices. You can add in cinnamon. That helps with your blood sugar regulation too. A lot of people love this cleansing drink where they put lemon, cayenne. Sometimes they put apple cider vinegar instead of lemon, but oftentimes it's that acidic, type of drink with a little bit of honey, with a little bit of cayenne or ginger, and they drink it like 3 times a day, just before going to bed, and it kind of helps them with their metabolism overnight. So these are kind of the foods that have that kind of effect. And also, for the estrobolome, where we talked about the estrogen metabolizing microbes, definitely, alcohol would have an effect. So removing alcohol or eliminating alcohol. But I mean, even if you don't eliminate, having the awareness that 1 glass, 2 glass, could contribute to this effect, just so you are aware, would still be beneficial. So you kind of know where your limits are. So you can see after a glass or 2, if you have it consistently, what impact does it have on your weight, on your symptoms, on, you know, your periods. So also eating phytoestrogens, so foods like a lot of plant-based foods can have a balancing effect on your hormones, especially cruciferous vegetables. Those are really, really good for your liver to detox. They have that sulforaphane element that helps the liver create the antioxidant glutathione. So it helps to kind of detox for estrogen and all that. So fiber, again, you do want to go often, like daily if possible, so that you don't get that autotoxicity effect where your body's like reabsorbing some of those toxins that is supposed to excrete. So, you know, based on all of this, I wanted to share with you a program that I'm working on, and I'm planning to launch it in February. I've been talking about it since last year, actually, because I gave a couple of webinars and some focus groups that are dedicated to perimenopause. And so after kind of like being more clear about this, I wanted to go through with anybody who wants to, you know, improve their gut health and lose weight. I wanted to take these 4 food elements and create a meal plan, and also add in exercises that are good for your core, like are really, really toning your belly. And I wanted to also add in some cold water immersion. So this was, you know, like a little bit of a kicker for your brown fats to, you know, start to release heat. It has an effect on weight loss and the metabolism. So that's kind of the program that I'm thinking of launching soon. And since you're here on this webinar, I just wanted you to have like the first exposure to the content and, you know, what's included in the program. So basically it's a 10-week program. Basically the 8 weeks, you know, would be the courses, the coaching. And, you know, the way I see it going is that you would first start with a cleanse. You would add in those elements of food to boost your metabolism, to slim down, lower the inflammation, and then improve digestion and refuel. So, you know, replace what foods you were eating with a healthier alternative, just to develop those habits. And throughout the program, we'll work on lowering stress, again, to support your adrenals and improve your sleep quality. And I really believe that exercise has to be a part of this. You know, it's not just about food, strengthening your pelvic floor, working on your abdominal strength, you know, so to prepare you for, you know, even for your back, you know, for your posture, for the strength of your lower back. All of that is so important as you go through perimenopause and into menopause. And so what I was envisioning is that you would start getting results within the first 4 weeks, but then the next 4 weeks is continuing the momentum. And we would also have 2 private coaching, because I like to be hands-on. Like, even though we do group coaching, I still want to know, like, privately what you're facing and what customized approach you would need. I also wanted to provide exercises. And so I invited Alexandra here. She's going to talk to you a little bit later about specific exercises, but I'd like for her to be a part of this as well, to just, you know, provide more specific exercises. Because you know, for people who are under a lot of stress, it's not the best to do like really high intensity exercises too, because then it creates more cortisol in the body and it could stress out your adrenals. So there are some really good exercises for weight loss that's not too intense. And of course, you're going to have access to all of this within a health portal. So you can do food journaling. You would have like all the learning courseware material in one place. And I wanted to put in a resource vault, which has the meal plans and the grocery list and all the recipes. So you don't have to think about how to coordinate the ginger with the broccoli and all this, you know, and how many carbs to take. And so I think this is a great way to learn a system to maintaining your gut health for pretty much your lifetime, because once you know it and once you experience it, you can always repeat it again. And so I basically, you know, wanted to share that with you. And I'll share you with the link later, but you can read about it. And, you know, because you're here, because you're my first group, I will, you know, offer a 10% discount as well. And so I'm going to share with you this page here. It's going to be in the link in the box as well. So if you're interested, you can read about it. I'm planning to start in February. So maybe February 8th. I was thinking it's a Wednesday. And so if you're interested in joining, you can click on the link or just send me an email for more information. We can talk about it as well. And because I'm offering 2 private consults, I'm also able to give you insurance receipts because they are, holistic nutrition consultations that I'm including into the program. So you can also get that back if you're insured for nutrition consultations. I'm just going to end this here and invite you to ask me any questions you have, whether it's about the webinar content or the program. Yeah, and I also wanted to invite Nicole to share with us her services at her naturopath clinic, because I know a lot of people have been asking me, even when I was teaching at the Women's Center in West Island, people were asking me about candida or leaky gut. How do I test for that? What about hormone testing? Should I look into bioidentical hormones? And so I would love for Nicole to just share some of her tests that she offers in her clinic. Go ahead, Nicole. And for everybody else, you can put in your chat box any questions you might have.
Thank you, Cindy. I loved your presentation. So yes, if ever you're interested in having certain tests done, there's, for example, testing hormones. There's several different ways. You can do the traditional test with your doctor, which is through blood, which will show the bound hormones. So it shows what hormones are being utilized in the body, but it's not showing how much. Whereas saliva, it shows the unbound. So that's showing how much of the hormones are circulating through your system. And then we can also take a look at your metabolites to see exactly what has been used. And that I usually find to be the most comprehensive. For gut health, if you're interested in understanding really deeply what's happening with the strains, with potential leaky gut, checking your zonulin numbers. Has everybody heard of zonulin, or is that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just quickly say what it is. So zonulin is created endogenously in the body. So your body produces this particular protein, and it interacts at within your gut, and it decides at the gut junctions how permeable that is. So if there's a lot of zonulin, it makes it much more permeable, and therefore leaky gut can occur. So usually your body isn't producing too much, but for those who are eating a lot of wheat products and so forth, then that is another source of zonulin, which is why oftentimes you will see such high sensitivities to gluten and to wheat products. So that is something that can be measured and taken a look at to see, okay, what exactly is going on. And also taking a look at different gut pathogens and getting an overall sense. Heavy metal testing is something also that is offered. I offer a number of different tests, so also food sensitivities. If you think that you might be reacting to a food in the sense of not having hives or anaphylactic shock, because that is an IgE response, whereas I would be testing the IgG response, which is looking at overall what your body is producing an immune response towards. And over a long period of time, that's where you see the cumulative effects. And that can be inflammation, it can be brain fog. Cindy, you mentioned candida. I checked that as well. It doesn't show the amount of candida. Everybody has candida. But what it does show is whether or not your body is producing an immune response towards it. So that's always interesting to really get a sense of. And then once you have that information, then you can take action. Yeah, so there's a lot that I test for hormonally, at the gut level, heavy metals, food sensitivities. If you want to know your nutrient profile, if you want to know about your omega fatty acids, if they're adequate or not, then those are all things that I test.
That's wonderful.
When you said producing immune response towards, would that be towards candida?
It can be towards candida or any number of different foods.
Okay, so because you say everybody has candida, so how would you test if would it be called an imbalance or an overgrowth, or how could you?
Because we're not looking at the quantity of candida in the body. We're looking at if your body is actually reacting to it as an antigen. If it's seeing it as something that shouldn't be there, and it's attacking it.
Okay. So you don't test the actual candida, you check the immune response towards
It's either yes or no. For that question, it's either yes, your body is producing an immune response, the IgG antibodies towards the candida, or it's not.
Okay.
So it's a yes
you
or
would
no.
know it. You would know if it's specifically towards the candida that it's responding to, not something else, not another.
It's that specific protein of the candida. Exactly. Yes.
Interesting. And do you do that? Do you have like a lab that you do that? Not yourself a lab, but where do you send that off to?
So I work with labs in the States and also in Canada. And so depending on which test we decide upon, that's where if you were to come to see me, we would sit down and get a sense of, okay, let's see what tests are going to be the most appropriate. A lot of them are not cheap, so we want to make sure that we're really looking to give the best response possible to really see what's appropriate for testing.
Right. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Nicole.
My pleasure.
Nicole and I did an interview a while ago when I was still in nutrition school. If you want to go on YouTube, you can check out BChamp Health, my YouTube channel, and you're going to find Nicole and I talking about bioidentical hormones, heavy metal testing. And so if you have any questions, Nicole, if you want to put in the chat box your email address or maybe a way for them to contact you, that would be
absolutely
great. Yeah, thank you. I also would love for Alexandra to share with us her thoughts on exercising for menopause or perimenopause. Alexandra, I met Alexandra through a business association, and she's developing a Pilates app, actually, for private Pilates. And for those who want more information about it, I can share with you later. But yeah, tell us, Alexandra, what are your thoughts on Pilates for menopause?
First of all, thank you for inviting me, and what an amazing presentation. That was very enjoyable and resourceful.
Thank you.
So well done. Yes, I am also I'm in my mid-40s. I'm 45, and I have a 2-year-old toddler, and I got my Pilates certification when I was pregnant to my second baby. He's my third. So I have Pilates in my life now permanently, and last year I started to have all these hormonal symptoms and changes, so I looked into it. So I did study Pilates for menopause. My school in London did a weekend workshop on it, so I am very fascinated by how our bodies is changing. And basically Pilates is all about the core, working the core muscles, and the core muscles are from our collarbone all the way down to our pubic bone and back, and the pelvic floor muscles are included in there, and they are the ones that get the biggest hit from pregnancy, postpartum, and also the changes with the hormones, because lower the estrogen, all that fertility system is out of business, so that everything in there, all these muscles start to become, too friendly with gravity, let's say. And so I am fascinated how Pilates can help with this department, and I teach it in every class, special breathing techniques, and then how to engage the pelvic floor muscles, the really deep muscles. And the exercises involved things like inversion, and it's not like hanging upside down. It's more like a elevated bridge where you put your feet on your sofa and on your back on the floor, and you work these muscles without putting the pressure. So you keep the pelvis elevated. There is also so many things for the spine, like you talked about lower back. So if you have increased belly fat, then all the weight goes in your lower back, and you have symptoms there as well. So yes, it is the breathing technique and going deeper. It's not about getting that six-pack anymore. It's about keeping everything solid and functional, and being able to function in your daily life with all your, tasks as a mother or grandmother or whatever that is demanded of you. So yes, in my app, I have that. I have Pilates for pregnancy, Pilates for postpartum, perimenopause, menopause. And I think Cindy mentioned about bone health at some point. That's why in my Pilates for menopause, I have the classical Pilates exercises with a little bit of extra challenge of weights.
Mhm.
So I talk a lot about body weight, lifting as well, things like planks, where you are able to build your strength with your own body weight. And then that gives your muscles the strength to support your bones. And then you don't have symptoms like arthritis, osteoporosis, fragile bones where you have accidents and everything breaks and you're like, what's happening? Why am I breaking legs and arms? So I think that's why I love Pilates as well. And that trust of like connecting with your body and understanding it is very important. So yes, it's really good to look into it earlier than later.
That sounds great, Alexandra. It makes total sense to me. And I'm glad that we have these resources here to help us during this time, because, it's much, much better to start earlier.
Yes,
because once the hormones start declining, and then you get into a situation where you feel more fragile, then you're less inclined to do these types of exercises, even for mental health. At some point, I see people who have accidents and it completely changed them. They could have been skiers, they were out on their bicycles. Once they have like a hip fracture or something like that, they totally don't trust their body, and then everything kind of dwindles down. So, you want to prevent that from happening, because there's so much more, to enjoy in our next chapter. And so you want to be in shape to really embrace that. So thank you so much. Do we have any more questions? Any comments? So funny. I really did have this one last thing here. Oh, sorry, Alexandra, keep talking.
I just had to share that I have tried Cindy's gut protocol, by the way, and it really works. So her advice has really helped me also to eliminate some extra little mama belly down there. So thank you, Cindy. I'm very much more aware of my gut health now.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. And so I was thinking of doing a podcast. I had a dream, actually, and the word orbit came through in the dream. So I wanted to call it Orbiting Around Menopause, because it's like, it's like those astronauts in space orbiting around the Earth. They're not landing on it yet. They're just kind of observing, they're hovering, they're looking, exploring a little bit from afar. And so I wanted to, start something like that called Orbiting Around Menopause. And so those who want to come in and join me as a guest speaker, let me know if you have experiences. I mean, you don't need to be an expert to join me on this podcast. It's really for everyday sharing of experiences, what helped you, what bothered you, just to have that conversation, and also normalize the fact that we are going through this. And it's something we have to all work through and learn from one another, because today we are exposed to a lot more chemicals than our grandmothers were. And so how we react to that can affect how we age. And so the more we learn from one another, I find that that empowers one another as well. So I really do believe in a grassroots level of, community education and sharing of our personal anecdotal experiences. And I think that's the best type of, I guess, clinical study you can have, really, because you're starting from a broad audience that are coming out, not funded, not, motivated by anything, that just wanted to share their experience and help one another. So thank you all for coming. Hi, Fondy, it's called LovJoy. Oh yeah, Alexandra shared her contact information. Nicole did as well. So please go ahead and copy it. For those who are not here and watching the video, I will send you the information, and everybody, I'll send you the link to this video as well. And so thank you again. I'm excited to see you, hopefully in my program. I'll send you the link to that. Jessica, you had a question.
Well, the podcast you were talking about, did that happen, or will it happen? And
I'm
when?
planning for it to happen, but actually, okay, since you're asking the question, what do you think of the name?
I like the name, the orbiting through hormones. I really do.
Cool. I'm glad
I really like that. Usually things come to us, unconsciously like that. So it seems like it fits.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I
I
just
plan
had a
to,
super quick question about bioidentical hormones. I know the RAMQ is now covering the some bioidentical hormones. Is that did I read right, or is that
yeah.
no?
So I have this here. You can read it in the news. It was just approved. You can estradiol 17B, and then there's mercurnized progesterone. That's going to be covered by RAMQ, right? So you could talk to your doctor about that.
Yeah, for sure. Because those are, I mean, they're considered natural. I mean, not as, when we say bioidentical hormones, they're in lieu of taking, like, how do I say? Back in the day, I remember my aunt taking hormones and it just completely screwed up her whole system, and she gained weight and whatnot. These are produced to mimic the hormones already being produced in your body. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm going to let Nicole answer your question. She has a lot of knowledge about bioidentical hormones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not to mimic per se. They are actually molecularly at that level identical. So when they say bioidentical, it really does mean that. At the molecular level, it's the exact same thing. And for that, you would need to have a prescription and bring that to a compounding pharmacy. So it is a little bit still specialized. And finding a doctor, your family GP, your gynecologist, who is willing and knowledgeable to write a prescription for that's where the tricky part comes in. If you want to know exactly the levels that you need or anything like that, I can refer you to a clinic who can measure and give you the appropriate amounts, and then you would bring that to your doctor, who would write you the script so that you could get that filled. It's a little bit of a process, but currently that's the way it's kind of happening right now in Quebec.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was fascinated with bioidentical hormones because I just love Suzanne Summers, and she was a pioneer, I guess, in that space. There was a lot of controversy around it back in the day. And so I read up about it, and for me, it totally made sense. Synthetic hormones are made from like horse urine and various animal products that have a worse effect on your body. And so I totally thought that it made sense. And so I'm going to probably reach out to you, Nicole, because I need to work on that too. But yeah, it is identical to your body's hormones.
Well, that's it. Back in the day, like I said, my aunt was taking what you're talking about, these synthetic hormones, and it wasn't good. It screwed up her system. So I know that this is very different, the bioidentical hormones. So yeah, I would definitely consult with Nicole come time if I want to know more. Yeah.
Well, I hope you have a lovely lunch and the rest of the day. It's just been so much fun talking to you. And if after the webinar you have more questions circulating, feel free to email them to me, cindy@bchamphealth.com. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Look forward to having more webinars, because that's my plan for this year. Podcasts, webinars, content, a lot more discussions.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Cindy.
Have a great day. Bye. Bye, Santa. Bye, Elizabeth.
Bye, everybody.